Sometimes, the strongest person is the one who stays silent, who feels everything but doesn't react to everything, who doesn't explain themselves to everyone, just stays loyal to their truth. And when you learn to act like you don't care, that's when you truly become free. There is a hidden weight in caring too much, a burden that silently crushes the spirit before it ever gets a chance to rise. It doesn't show up all at once. It sneaks in little by little. You think you're being kind. You think you're being thoughtful. You think you're being strong by holding space for everyone's opinions, their judgments, their moods, their projections. But the truth is, when you carry every voice on your shoulders, your own voice gets drowned in the noise. You cannot build yourself while breaking under the pressure of being understood by everyone. You cannot become who you're meant to be if you're constantly trying to fit into someone else's mold. The moment you start giving weight to every glance, every comment, every opinion, you start bleeding energy, and that energy is exactly what you need to build something meaningful in your life. You see, not every opinion is worthy of your attention. Not every voice deserves access to your mind. Not every misunderstanding needs to be cleared up. Because if you try to correct every misconception, you'll end up walking in circles, exhausted, confused, and disconnected from your purpose. There is a freedom in knowing that your job is not to be liked, applauded, or validated. Your job is to be aligned, focused, and whole. If you're constantly wondering what they think, if you're trying to meet everyone's expectations, if you're adjusting your truth to avoid friction, you will lose yourself. You will wake up one day exhausted from performing and still feel empty inside, because the applause never lasts, the validation is never enough, and the opinions keep changing. One minute you're a hero, the next you're a villain. And if you tie your worth to that, you will break every single time the world shifts on you. You can't allow every opinion to live rent-free in your mind. You can't allow every misunderstanding to rent space in your heart. You have to learn the difference between being empathetic and being emotionally enslaved. You can love people and still not carry their expectations. You can be kind and still protect your boundaries. Because every time you give too much of yourself to things that don't serve your growth, you delay the life you're meant to live. Let people think what they want. Let them misunderstand you. Let them call you cold. Because the alternative is much worse, losing your peace, losing your clarity, losing your fire, because you're too busy trying to explain yourself to people who were never trying to understand you in the first place. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need to fight every battle. You don't need to explain every move. Sometimes the greatest strength is in your silence. Sometimes your healing begins the moment you stop caring so much about how others perceive your journey. Because at the end of the day, they weren't there when you cried yourself to sleep. They weren't there when you pulled yourself up from the darkness. They weren't there when you fought invisible battles just to survive. So no, they don't get to define you. Protect your peace like your future depends on it, because it does. Protect your energy like it's sacred, because it is. And most of all, protect your heart from the poison of over-caring, because when you finally stop trying to be everything to everyone, you free yourself to be exactly who you were born to be. So the next time you feel the urge to defend, explain, or prove, pause. Take a deep breath, remember who you are, and remind yourself you were never meant to carry it all. Let go of what was never yours to hold. There's a big difference between being cold and being careful with your energy. Acting like you don't care is not about shutting down. It's about leveling up. It's about deciding that your peace, your focus, your emotional stability are worth more than every opinion, every comment, every mood swing someone else brings into your life. You're not being cruel when you stop explaining yourself. You're not being arrogant when you choose silence over chaos. You're being wise. You're being intentional. You're choosing to protect the parts of yourself that used to bleed for everyone. Because every time you give people access to your emotions, you're trusting them with power, and not everyone deserves that kind of access. Some people only want a reaction, not a resolution. Some want to control your peace just to feel powerful themselves. And if you're always handing out your emotional energy to everyone who taps your shoulder, you'll burn out. You'll end up drained, questioning yourself, giving away your fire one spark at a time. That's why acting like you don't care is a boundary. It's an emotional filter. It says, I see what's happening, but I choose not to give it power over me. You walk in silence not because you're weak, but because you know your voice is too sacred to waste. You don't react to every insult, not because it doesn't sting, but because your purpose is too big to be derailed by small minds. You don't argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you, because their confusion is not your responsibility. And while others might be loud, messy, dramatic, you remain still. You remain grounded. You stay in your lane because you've learned what distraction costs. The moment you start reacting to every bit of drama, you lose focus. You lose momentum. You give your power away, piece by piece, word by word. But when you master the art of not caring, not from a place of numbness, but from a place of self-protection, you begin to move differently. You begin to glow differently. You begin to live for yourself, not for the noise. You begin to choose your peace over someone's chaos. You begin to pause before responding. You begin to observe instead of absorb. And that's how you protect your energy. You stop attending every argument you're invited to. You stop letting every comment live in your head. You stop feeling the need to explain your silence, your boundaries, your choices. The truth is, not everyone deserves to sit at your emotional table. Not everyone deserves access to your mind, your heart, your reactions. And acting like you don't care teaches you how to filter, how to guard your space without guilt, how to move in peace without apology, how to rise without making announcements. Because your growth doesn't require permission. It doesn't need to be validated. It just needs to be protected. There will always be someone watching, waiting for you to react, to defend yourself, to get pulled into the chaos. But when you no longer hand out emotional access, when you no longer feel obligated to attend the drama, you become untouchable. Not heartless, just grounded. Not bitter, just focused. Not detached, just aligned. And in that space you find clarity. You find silence that heals. You find strength that doesn't shout. You start conserving your energy for what actually matters. Your goals, your peace, your purpose. Because every time you don't respond to chaos, you feed your power. Every time you don't chase validation, you build self-respect. Every time you act like you don't care, you take one step closer to becoming unshakable. It's not about being cold. It's about choosing not to bleed for people who would never stop to heal you. It's about walking quietly while everyone else makes noise, because you know where you're going. And you don't need their approval to get there. Approval seeking is the invisible prison most people don't even realize they're living in. It creeps in slowly. At first it's just wanting to be liked. Then it becomes needing to be accepted. And before you know it, you're performing. Your words, your decisions, even your dreams shaped by what others might think. You begin to live like a puppet, dancing for applause, addicted to validation, constantly seeking the next nod of approval to feel worthy. But here's the truth: validation is fleeting, and chasing it will drain your soul. Every time you shape your life to win someone's approval, you step further away from who you truly are. You start to dim your light, soften your truth, and compromise your spirit, just to avoid judgment, just to feel liked. But no amount of likes, praise, or external validation will ever fill the void that comes from betraying yourself. That emptiness isn't caused by being disliked. It's caused by abandoning your authenticity. People-pleasing might look like kindness, but often, it's a form of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. So you smile when you want to scream. You agree when your soul says no. You shrink when your purpose asks you to stand tall. And all the while, your spirit quietly suffocates under the weight of inauthenticity. Because the more you seek to be liked by everyone, the more you lose yourself. You were not born to be universally accepted. You were born to walk in purpose. And sometimes, purpose looks like standing alone. Sometimes it looks like saying no when everyone expects yes. Sometimes it means walking away from comfort into the unknown, not because it's popular, but because it's right. Seeking approval will keep you small, but walking in purpose will teach you to be brave. The applause will fade. The opinions will change. Today they'll cheer. Tomorrow they'll criticize. If your identity is built on their approval, you'll crumble when it disappears. You'll become a slave to every new trend, every shifting opinion, every passing judgment. But when your identity is rooted in truth, you become unshakable. You stop needing confirmation from the crowd, because you've already been commissioned by your calling. You don't need everyone to understand your path. It's not their job to validate what was whispered to you in silence. Your vision was given to you for a reason. Don't let the noise of the world drown out your own voice. Approval seeking keeps you in delay. You keep waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to begin, okay to be bold, okay to live loud. But you don't need permission to be real. You just need the courage to stop pretending. Let people misunderstand you. Let them question your decisions. Let them walk away if your truth makes them uncomfortable. That's not your burden. Your burden is to stay true, to stay focused, to stay in alignment with your purpose, even when it costs you likes, praise, or company. Because the moment you stop performing for applause, you start living in power. There's a rare freedom that comes when you no longer care if they approve. You start dressing for yourself, speaking with conviction, dreaming without limits. You stop diluting your light just to fit in rooms that weren't built for your greatness. You realize the people meant for you will find you in your truth, not in your performance. There comes a point in life when you must realize not everyone will understand your path. your growth, or your decisions, and that's okay. The need to be understood by everyone is a silent killer of purpose. Every time you pause your journey to explain yourself, you lose momentum. Every time you defend your boundaries, your healing, or your new standards, you waste precious energy trying to satisfy minds that are already committed to misunderstanding you. Let them assume. Let them twist your words. Let them judge you through the lens of their own limitations. Their perception of you is not your responsibility. It never was. You're not here to win their approval. You're here to become who you were meant to be. People will criticize what they don't understand and condemn what they can't control. Growth threatens the comfort of those who remain stagnant. When you start saying no more often, when you set boundaries, when you disappear to rebuild your mind, when you walk away from dysfunction that unsettles those who once fed off your silence, your people-pleasing, and your self-betrayal, they'll say, "You've changed." They're right, you have. But the real problem is they expected you to stay broken, lost, or dependent so they could remain comfortable. But you didn't. You chose self-respect, you chose healing, you chose truth over image. And now, because they can't reach the version of you that no longer exists, they attack it still. Don't explain. Don't lower your voice to make them feel better. Don't shrink so others feel tall. That version of you who needed to be liked, to be chosen, to be constantly understood, that version is gone. You're evolving. And evolution comes with noise, with rumors, with distance, with criticism. Let it come, let it echo, let them talk. While they're talking, you keep building. While they're speculating, you keep rising. While they're judging, you keep growing. Because in the end, the results will speak louder than the noise ever could. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the discipline of someone who has learned that peace is worth more than being liked. The people who truly love you won't need a press release on your growth. They'll feel it. They'll respect it. The ones who walk away were only attached to a version of you that no longer serves your higher calling. Let them walk. Let them misunderstand. The truth always reveals itself in time. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to explain your boundaries, your healing, your priorities, or your distance. You owe no apology for choosing yourself, for reclaiming your time, your voice, and your purpose. Your focus is sacred. Your energy is gold. Don't spend it trying to be seen clearly by those who've already decided to see you through a distorted lens. The more you grow, the less accessible you become. That's not arrogance. That's self-preservation. Your life isn't a group project. Everyone doesn't get a vote. You're not obligated to drag people into your next chapter when they were only built for the prologue. So breathe. Keep your head down. Build quietly. Move intentionally. Heal in private. Celebrate in silence. Let them keep guessing. Because while they're watching your old story, you're out here writing a new one. And it's one they'll never understand until they've done the work to grow themselves. Let them misunderstand you. Keep building anyway. The ones who matter will meet you at the top. The rest were never meant to make the climb. Stop shrinking for their comfort. Stop sacrificing your peace for popularity. Stop waiting for someone to clap before you believe you're worthy. You are not a performer on a stage. You are a soul with a purpose. And the sooner you let go of needing everyone's approval, the sooner you'll rise into who you were truly meant to be. Your peace is power, real, unshakable power, and not everyone can handle it. Some people are so used to living in dysfunction that your calm presence feels like an attack. When you stop reacting, they feel ignored. When you stop defending yourself, they feel unseen. But what they don't understand is that your silence is not weakness, it's mastery. Your stillness is not apathy, it's strength. And your refusal to be pulled into their chaos is the greatest threat you pose to their control. You see, people who live in chaos feed off reaction. They thrive on drama. They stir the pot and wait for your response. Your anger, your frustration, your emotional explosion. Those are their fuel. Because when you react, they know they still have access to you. They know they can still reach into your peace and disrupt it. But when you don't flinch, when you respond with quiet detachment, that's when you shatter the illusion of their influence. Your peace makes them uncomfortable because it reflects everything they are not. Your emotional control exposes their instability. Your grounded energy reveals their inner turbulence. They want you to argue. They want you to explain. They want you to fall apart just so they can feel powerful. But when you don't play the game, when you no longer take the bait, you starve their chaos. You become untouchable. This is why when you grow in emotional discipline, the attacks get louder. Not because you're weak, but because your strength is being tested. When you stop responding to every insult, every provocation, every desperate attempt to reel you in, you become a mirror. You reflect back to them their own chaos, their own unhealed wounds, their own emotional immaturity. And for people who are committed to dysfunction, your peace is dangerous. It's threatening. Because it shows them they can't control you anymore. But here's what they don't realize. Your silence is not the absence of care. It's the presence of boundaries. You've simply chosen not to give your energy to what drains you. You've chosen to protect your mental clarity. You've decided that your peace is more valuable than temporary satisfaction. And that choice is your freedom. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of being cold. They'll try harder to trigger you, because your lack of reaction makes them feel powerless. But don't let it fool you. You're not cold, you're clear. You're not detached from life. You're detached from drama. You're not heartless, you're healed. And your healing doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be firm. Detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you no longer bleed for everything. It means you've learned how to observe without absorbing. You've learned how to listen without defending. You've learned that peace isn't passive. It's protective. And now you don't hand it out to anyone who threatens it. So let them talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them try. Their chaos is not your responsibility. Their emotional turbulence is not your storm to calm. You've chosen a higher path. A path of discipline, of stillness, of inner power. You've chosen not to engage in pointless battles. And that, more than anything, will disarm every person who tries to provoke you. Your peace doesn't need validation. It speaks for itself. It moves in silence and destroys every form of manipulation with quiet resolve, so hold that peace close. Guard it like treasure, because the more grounded you are, the less they can shake you. And the more you honor your silence, the more powerful you become. Growth is often misunderstood. The moment you start protecting your peace, setting boundaries, and moving with clarity, people say you've changed. They'll call you cold, distant, detached. But what they don't realize is, this is not coldness. This is clarity. This is what maturity looks like. You didn't shut down. You simply stopped entertaining what no longer serves your growth. There comes a point in life where you can no longer afford to be available for chaos. Where you can't keep explaining your worth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Growth is when you stop arguing with people who don't hear you and stop showing up in places where your soul feels drained. That's not cold. That's wisdom. You're no longer moved by noise. You've chosen focus. You've chosen discipline. You've chosen your future. People who were comfortable with your confusion won't know what to do when you get clear. When you stop over-explaining. When you stop apologizing for your standards. When you stop being overly available. Clarity disrupts dysfunction. It makes people uncomfortable. Because when you start honoring yourself, it forces them to confront how they benefited from your lack of boundaries. And when you no longer bend to keep the peace, they label you as the problem. But don't fall for it. You didn't lose your heart. You just found your backbone. You didn't become emotionless. You became emotionally intelligent. You didn't stop caring. You stopped caring about the wrong things. There's a big difference between being cold and being conscious. Between shutting down and leveling up. And growth means you now understand the difference. You now know that not everything deserves your time. Not every invitation needs a response. Not every drama requires your participation. You're no longer driven by impulse. You're led by purpose. You're no longer chasing approval. You're walking in alignment. You've stopped performing for applause and started living in your truth. That clarity will cost you. It'll cost you relationships that were built on your silence. It'll cost you friendships that only survived when you tolerated disrespect. It'll cost you attention from people who only stayed because you made yourself small. But what you gain in return is priceless peace, presence, and power. The kind of power that doesn't need to dominate, it just stands firm. The kind of peace that doesn't need noise, it thrives in stillness. And yes, it might feel lonely at times. Growth often does. Because you're shedding layers. You're releasing patterns. You're letting go of who you had to be just to survive. And now you're stepping into who you were meant to be. Rooted, stable, clear. You don't seek revenge. You don't beg for closure. You simply move different. And that movement speaks volumes. Let them call you cold. Let them think you stopped caring. The truth is, you've just started caring about yourself more deeply. You've stopped leaking energy on things that drain you. You've stopped lighting yourself on fire to keep others warm. That's not cruelty, it's clarity. And it's the kind of clarity that only comes through pain, reflection, and real growth. So hold your head high. Walk your path with grace. You're not hard to love. You're hard to manipulate. You're not difficult. You're discerning. You're not cold. You're clear. And that clarity is a reflection of your evolution. This is the season of your becoming. And not everyone will understand it. That's okay. Growth isn't about proving anything. It's about embodying truth. You're no longer who you used to be. And that's the point. You didn't become cold. You became clear. You stopped bending to be accepted. You stopped shrinking to fit into places that didn't value your worth. Growth demanded that you protect your energy, choose peace over chaos, and live in alignment with your truth. And while that clarity may have cost you people, habits, and comfort zones, it gifted you something greater: self-respect, purpose, and inner peace. You're not heartless, you're just no longer available for what disrupts your healing. And that's not a weakness, it's power. Keep walking in that clarity. Let your growth speak louder than your explanations.